Hi everyone, today let's talk about Salesforce, then we'll get into the economic data and the charts, then we'll take a look at my results for the day and my thoughts going into tomorrow's session. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day that the markets are open as well as Sundays, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So we're at the tail end of earnings season, and this is one of the late reporters here with Salesforce, coming in better than expectations. You can see it popped after hours, up around 6%. Earnings per share, $2.12 versus $1.90. Revenue also beating by a few hundred million. Everything looks good for Salesforce. Nice little pop on earnings, and that's encouraging to the markets. I don't know necessarily this is going to be a big driver like Nvidia, but it is good to see some other companies besides Nvidia coming out with monstrous earnings, potentially driving a little bit of optimism in the markets. Moving over to economic data, you can see GDP came in just under expectations. Not terrible, and the markets were a little bit mixed on it. Pending home sales did jump quite a bit though. Expectation was minus 0.6. We ended up getting 0.9, which was very good. Looking at tomorrow, we have Europe's CPI numbers. That'll be interesting, as well as their unemployment rate, which is quite high at 6.4, much higher than the US. And then tomorrow at 7:30 Central Time, 8:30 Eastern, we have core PCE year over year and month over month, as well as initial jobless claims, and then headline PCE, obviously all at the same time, and then Fed balance sheet at the end of the day. Moving over to Max Payne, we have jumped quite a lot in terms of total options, up to 1.5 million. Quite a lot for an off week, not a third week expiration, and you can see we are quite high compared to Max Payne. Put wall still at 440. Call wall 450, potentially 453. Top of the puts sitting at 451, which is basically right where we are, indicating that we might be topping out here for the week. Could certainly grind and stay here towards the end of the week, but Max Payne's a little bit lower, and you do have to account for that right in this dip here between 440 and 445. Put call ratio still very high at 2.8. And you can see that here, lots of puts, not very many calls. And it would not be surprising to me if we finished basically right where we are at 451. Moving over to the charts, starting off with the hour and the daily on the SPY, you can see we rallied a little bit in the pre-market and then basically held throughout the day. Dipped in the mid-session, but ended up closing right at that level. You can see that longer-term trend line being resistance. We talked about that yesterday on the hourly chart. We didn't quite hit it on the daily, which is interesting, but momentum bullish. Volume stepping down on the day. RSI on the hourly starting to tick lower a little bit. Definitely interesting. Momentum ticking lower as well. Wouldn't shock me if we got a little bit of a pullback tomorrow. Like we said with Max Payne, we're kind of in that. We're at the top of the puts right now, which is typically where we finish in a bull rally. Again, wouldn't be surprising if we got a little bit of a pullback down to 448.74 or so. And on the flip side of that, PCE data could come in super bullish and push us right through those levels. Certainly possible as well. Moving over to the NASDAQ on the hour and the daily, did get above my level, did hold there, so I'm trading off of that 376.45 level right now. If that breaks, you have the 21 sitting at 375.69. Pretty consolidated in this area, and then it's a lot of room before we find major support. So certainly could pull back if we break these levels here on the hourly chart. Daily looking quite bullish, getting to that highly traded zone, which is interesting. Certainly could hold there. Certainly an area of potential resistance. You can see we're in this consolidation now right at the lows from this lower high setup that we had before that bigger down move. Momentum still bullish, so you could absolutely go higher, but a couple of things to watch for a potential reversal in the near term. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, Russell did exactly what we thought, pushed up to 189, hit the 200 on the 4-hour chart, did everything we talked about yesterday. Question is now, are we going to pull back from here, or are we going to hold and then break to this next level up at 191.89 or the 144 EMA at 191.37? Certainly possible. Momentum starting to fade a little bit on the 4-hour chart. We're not overbought yet. Dow continuing to rocket higher, looks a little bit stronger than the Russell here today. RSI still pushing higher, not overbought yet. Momentum looks about the same, but the price action still looks a little bit more bullish. Moving over to Salesforce here, you can see they have been channeling up nicely. Then we had that bigger breakdown just like everything else. And you can see what that looked like. Big move down, kind of through a wick low, and then we've been rallying into their earnings. We hit that 55 EMA at the end of day today. And then jumping over to the 4-hour chart, you can see that after hours earnings up to 227.30, hitting that level, hitting trend resistance, definitely interesting. If this area breaks, you could look for a move to 238.26. And then above that, I have 247.11. Bullish momentum, bullish RSI. Everything is overbought with this bigger up move, but that doesn't mean that this can't go higher. And earnings is typically a nice catalyst, especially when it's as positive as this one was. Moving over to Apple and Tesla. Apple on an absolute rocket ship on the day, broke all those levels, broke 186.81, trading off that level now up to the next one at 199.96. Also have a little bit of trend resistance just short of that level, but overall still bullish. Super overbought, momentum still bullish, you have to respect it. Has not shown really any weakness on this rally yet, still looks good. Tesla, on the other hand, chopped just above my level at 255.44. Did break down just barely from that 200 SMA after hours. Momentum, slight divergence from Tuesday into Wednesday. Does look a little bit weaker. And it wouldn't shock me if we saw just a little bit of a pullback. Doesn't mean that we're going to break down fully here. Everything is still bullish in the shorter term, but might see a little pullback. And then we'll have to decide on a direction if we're going to break down fully back to these previous highs, or if we're going to hold and push up to 264.68. Moving over to Netflix and Alphabet. Netflix right at the highly traded zone here on the daily chart. Definitely interesting level. Could absolutely trade off of that at 434.84. If it gets above there, you can look for a push up to 455.91. Certainly possible. Bullish momentum, bullish RSI crossing the 50 line. Looks pretty clean. You can see that low, higher low setup coming off the 9 EMA. Looks clean to the upside. Alphabet absolutely breaking out. Really, it broke out yesterday and I didn't cover it. I didn't see it yesterday, but we got a continuation, got above 133.86 yesterday. Rally continues today, pushing up to 138.21. If that level breaks, then I have 143.82 to the upside. Momentum bullish, RSI looks clean, not overbought yet. Everything looks good. Moving over to Staples and Discretionary. Staples continues to rally, did not get above the 55 EMA, potentially coming into some resistance, stepped down on momentum after hours. Doesn't really mean anything, could absolutely rally into the market open, certainly possible. If the 55 breaks, then you're looking at $74 potentially. Discretionary broke that 200, rallied up to the next level like we talked about. And then it threw a wick up to 170.68 right at that level here and then pulled back. Momentum fading slightly, RSI pulling back slightly. Quite a bit of volume on that wick. Certainly possible that we could break down from there. Everything is still intact to the upside and we're actually above all the EMAs and SMAs here on the 4-hour chart. So still a bullish trend and still a bullish technical, but clear resistance and a highly traded zone sitting at 170.10. Moving over to tech and oil and gas. Tech broke out above 173.52, rallying up to 177.11. Looks clean, momentum bullish. RSI is overbought, but that doesn't mean that it can't go higher. Oil and gas, we talked about this being a double top, which it absolutely was, and then we ended up getting a lower low versus this midpoint and below the 55. But then we found a solid base and rallied. I didn't have any levels in there, so this would have been a tougher trade. But once it got above my 145.92 level, you could have taken that potentially up to 149 at these previous highs. Now you have like a triple top setting up. The question is, will this break out? And if it does, where is it going? You really have to go all the way back here to November of 22. You can see current prices here at 148.52. If it gets up to this highly traded zone up around 150.60, that could be an interesting level, or potentially the top of this consolidation at 153.14, certainly an interesting area. But you need to see that breakout first, and right now we haven't seen it. Moving over to breadth, momentum still bullish. On both charts now, you like to see it. But we are in an area where we could find a little bit of resistance. We hit the 21 here on the 50-day average. We also hit the 144 on the 200-day average. If we see a little bit of a pullback, that's certainly possible down to like 52 or the 9 EMA on both of these charts. Certainly possible you could see a pullback like that. Set up a higher low on breadth. And if that happens, then we should see a more dramatic up move in my opinion. So watching this one closely as we go into the Thursday and Friday sessions, certainly going to be an interesting one. RSI on both of these showing strength. You want to see it get across the 50 line and start to push to overbought conditions. But right now, this looks like a big move down, bottom. Could see that rejection from that first rally, double bottom or a higher low setup, and then we could look for that bigger push. Certainly possible. or you get a clean rejection from here and make a lower low. You do have to respect that as a possibility. I don't really think that's super likely. Everything looks a little bit bullish in my opinion, but it is something to account for. Moving over to yields on the 2-year and the 10-year. 2-year yield on the daily chart still holding just above that 55 EMA. 10-year on the daily chart is kind of lost in space, so this is the 12-hour. You can see we were interacting with that 55 EMA. Still bearish momentum, still bearish RSI, and it does look like we're breaking through that now. If we get a bigger drop down to this 4% area, that should spell a little bit more bullishness for equities. Moving over to the dollar on the hour and the daily, this continues to do exactly what we expected. Got the first big drop, got the second big drop. That's 3 days in a row of bearishness. Usually after 3 days, you see a little bit of a bounce, and it would make sense coming off of that 21 EMA as well as the 200. Momentum is bearish. RSI definitely looks weak, but you do have to respect 3 days in a row. On a counter trend, you could look for a little bit of a bounce and then get the continuation. This still looks super bearish, so I wouldn't trade that right now, but it is something to be aware of if you're trading this to the bear side. 3 days in a row, pretty dramatic. Off of this bigger rally, might see a little bit of a bounce, but ultimately I'm still thinking that the dollar is going to move lower. Moving over to bonds, JNK TLT, indecision on both of them. You can see that Doji did throw a wick, but closed below 92.50. TLT gap down, absolutely went sideways. Momentum on both of these is still bullish. RSI coming off that 50 line on TLT. Again, 96.50. You want to see it get above there and rally. Has not done it yet. TLT in an area of resistance. If this breaks down a little bit stronger, takes out the trend line, that could be weak. Pushing back down to 90.50. You have to remember it's been chopping in this zone for a long time. It has held this trend multiple times now, and it still looks bullish in the short term, but you have to respect this longer term chart. Moving over to volatility, move index really didn't move very much, but still holding the trend, momentum bearish. VIX continues to break down, tried to rally just a little bit on the 4-hour, broke down again. We're back into this range around that 1390 area like we talked about yesterday. RSI getting almost oversold here on the 4-hour chart. Does not mean that we're going to bounce immediately, but we haven't been oversold for a while here on the 4-hour chart. You can see the last time was in June of this year, and then we held kind of in that zone before having a pickup in volatility. Of course, this is still bearish, but it is something to watch. Moving over to my accounts, I did not do great. It says $50 positive, but I think I ended up losing about $60 or so. Traded just fine in my IRA. The market rallied and I rolled up my puts. And then right at the end of the session, I was basically right at 189. I decided to purchase some shares and sell a 189 call for $1.10. And the market's a little bit higher here after hours on the IWM, which seems to be working out fine. Qs, on the other hand, I got stopped out of some puts a couple of times, which was not great. With about 2 hours to go, I ended up selling some 375 puts for tomorrow, and that helped curve some of my stop out losses. Got about another $1 or so of potential profit there. And then on my covered calls, I decided to roll out one of those sets to 373 to give myself a little bit of upside potential there. I do expect to let these 367 calls go tomorrow. We'll see how that one plays out. If the market is still continuing to rally super aggressively, maybe I'll try to roll them out, but at this point I'm going to have to pay a debit to do it, which is not my preferred method. I would usually just sell some calls to get into shares if I want to do it that way. Overall, everything looks a little bit bullish, but a little bit less bullish than yesterday. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of Salesforce earnings or any of the other things that I mentioned today, economic data or the charts. Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.